Jade, thank you so much for joining me. This is kind of a new thing for me, so I appreciate it. And I know, Jim and Steve had a lot of good things to say about you, so I'm excited.
Oh, glad to be here. Appreciate it, Justin.
Yeah, so to be candid, when actually my mom's a CPA, so she's an advocate for the fair tax. But most of the CPAs I speak to, it's kind of like I don't know. I think they almost feel like it's a challenge to, or it's maybe hurt their or just something kind of negative. I don't know. They don't really see the full picture. I think so. So as an accountant, what, or can you, yeah, just here. I'll pass the mic over to you. What? Yeah.
Well, maybe just a quick background on what the fair tax is, just for your
Yeah,
for your
sure.
viewers and listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So very high level, and we can get into all the detail you want. The fair tax is a proposal. It's been in Congress since 1999, so 26 years. HR 25 in the House, and it's been up in the Senate under various Senate numbers over the years as well. Actually gets quite a few co-sponsors, and it's a system that would eliminate and replace the income tax and payroll tax system that we currently have with a more efficient national sales tax system. The bill is meant to be revenue neutral. So if we take in $4 trillion now into our U.S. Treasury each year under the income and payroll tax, the fair tax would bring in the same amount. It would eliminate. When you think about income tax, there's quite a bit to it, so it's worth kind of a double click. So we think about individual income tax. So like you and me as Joe Blow Americans filling out our individual Ts and 1040 EZs and Schedule A itemized deductions and all the things that come with that. That would be no more. And businesses and individuals print out enough paper each year to like circumnavigate the globe
Right.
scores and scores and scores of time. So there's all these ancillary benefits to the fair tax we can get into later, like even just it's a green bill, recycling. But individual income tax gone. Corporate income tax. Right now, it came down, in the 2017 TCJA, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and has been made permanent. What is it down to now? 21%, I think. Used to be a lot higher. That would go away. And I like to pause here because you think back, in the last 10 years, you've heard about these inversions, these companies that like to go, oh, I'm going to Ireland. They only have a 12.5% corporate income tax rate. That's where I
Right.
want my headquarters to be. Yeah. And I want to structure it so most of my income gets treated like it's being taxed in Ireland because it's so great. Imagine being the corporate tax haven of the world, 0% corporate income tax rate. So
I'm
again,
imagining
just
it. I'm getting super excited.
well, the incidental, peripheral, ancillary, whatever synonym you wanna use, the benefits, are really amazing, and we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Estate tax, so think death tax when you die. Now the new, the OBBB that passed, I think we're set at 15 million now for a married couple on an estate tax threshold. So, it gives a little bit of relief there, but those who do extra well and have over 15 million of an estate, they won't have to sell the farm in Iowa to pay the income tax on the death tax, the estate tax anymore because the estate tax is gone. Gift taxes. So you've got a track like, I do 5 for my kids in college and you get up to a level and you actually have to file gift tax returns and make sure if you're exceeding the annual limit you're using your annual lifetime deduction of that 15 million, and it's just a record keeping nightmare.
Yes.
All of that goes away as well, and so you basically have no individual or corporate income taxes and all those, alternative minimum tax, gift tax, estate tax. What about the payroll tax? This is the thing when my kids started, earning a paycheck. They're like, they come home with tears in their eyes and they
Yeah.
show me the paycheck and they're like, who's FICA and why is he
Yeah.
taking my money?
Darn FICA. What did they do? I didn't see them next to me when I was working. I was there slaving away. Where's FICA?
I never even met the guy.
Yeah. Is it a guy? Is it a girl?
Yeah, we don't even know. FICA's gender neutral, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
So the payroll tax, we don't realize this, but our whole treasury we take in, and I can't remember, it varies fiscal year to fiscal year, but say we're in the 4 to 5 trillion the US government is taking in from taxes each.
Okay, we're back. Sorry about that.
You're okay. So we're talking about FICA and the kids crying and everything, but we don't realize, so 40% of our nation's receipts are taken in with the Social Security and Medicare tax. And It's worth noting this because the FICA, the Social Security and Medicare tax is highly regressive. And we'll examine what that word means. I'm sure 90% of your viewing audience understands that. But basically, it just kind of means taxes are regressive. They're harder for the poor to pay taxes, the working poor, anyone, really in the lower income tax brackets, et cetera. It's harder for them to pay taxes. So the concept with progressivity as opposed to regressivity is that you charge working poor and folks making less and earning less, you charge them less in taxes in both percentage and amount. When you think about the payroll tax, guess what? It's like nearly 10% of your pay automatic. There's no progressivity to it whatsoever. It's actually the most regressive tax that we have, and it's 40% of our nation's treasury receipts. So we don't realize how actually, especially if one prescribes to the theory, and most people generally think this way, that if you make less, you should be paying less taxes. It's not too hard of a concept for people to get your head around. Now, I've heard some people argue quite vehemently the other way that, well, it should be the same percentage for everyone no matter what, a flat rate. And that's a fair argument as well, because, then you have skin in the game, so to speak, for
Mhm.
your national defense and your roads and everything that the taxes would give you. But, generally, this progressivity has a pretty firm footing. So, but we think about it and we think we're so progressive with our graduated income tax rate, but it's actually not that progressive because of the payroll tax, and that goes away under the fair tax. Now you might think, wait a minute, does Social Security go away? No, no, no. Let's just pause for a second. Don't start breathing heavily and have a
Yeah.
coronary. Social Security, this one fair tax rate that I'll tell you about momentarily, covers everything. Social
Yeah.
Security, Medicare, everything. It's revenue neutral. The same money's coming in now. And there's actually a clause when you read the fair tax bill, and it's only about 100 pages, by the way. It's very simple, very, very short. First few pages are basically doing away with all the IRS code. It actually mandates a certain percentage of the fair tax receipts that come in go to fund Social Security. So it's actually on a firmer footing. So let me
Ru
pause. Let's see if there's any questions before I keep
Well,
on giving the
yeah,
the high
I wanna
level.
ask you, one of the things that and I don't even think my brain can really it sounds like you have a much sharper brain than myself. So the term that you brought up was regressive. Is
Mhm.
that one of the you said that our current system is that the correct term, regressive?
Yeah. Well, as it relates to the payroll tax, yes. Now, the
So
graduated
what
income tax rate is not regressive. That's progressive by definition.
Okay, so the opposite of regressive is progressive? Okay, because I think, I've heard some other guys say a different word like ingressive or something, but that's just a wrong terminology, correct?
I've not heard that term.
Okay, yeah, I think, some, I there's a lot of people or the people that I speak to are very pro fair tax, but I think sometimes they heard somebody anyway, so, okay. Yeah, I mean, hopefully somebody in the audience understands what you're I mean, to be candid, it is so confusing to me, and that's one of the reasons I like the because it's confusing. It's like, I would rather just go anyway, I don't wanna jump in front of what you're about to say, but, just for me, I just want it simple, and to me,
I
the fair tax is simple.
I love what you're saying, Justin, because and I'll keep on describing the basics here in a second. And
Yeah,
simple is one of the core foundational principles of the fair tax.
mhm,
Simple, and effective and efficient. So you're on the right track here. So let's say let's go into. So we kind of talked about what the income tax is a little bit more than the fair tax, and what would all go away with the fair tax. The fair tax is a simple one rate. The economic PhD research thus far thinks it'll be a 23% inclusive rate in everything we buy. But we have to remember, you think, whoa, what the heck? 23%? That's unbelievable. But you're gonna keep your whole paycheck under the fair
right,
tax. And with some recent polling we did with Qantas, with Americans for Fair Taxation, which is our grassroots organization that kind of came up with the fair tax, that is the single biggest selling point that Americans love. 1,200 people were sampled here a couple months ago. All the demographics down the middle, half Democrat, half Republican, male, female, college educated, not. That is that you people love keeping their whole paycheck, and then and paying the fair tax as they consume. Now, here's one thing. Let me pause for a second, Justin. A
yeah,
lot of people think, wait a minute, You know the general theory, you get less of what you tax. That's you've heard that a million times on financial shows and things like that. And so
Mhm.
some people think because of that underlying inherent principle that, well, wait a minute, we're going to tank our economy because no one's going to purchase anything. And we say,
Yeah.
well, let's hold on and pump the brakes on that as well. That is a reasonable thought. Proactively and preemptively address it here. When you have the fair tax, I should be very specific here. It is a tax once and only once on new retail, new goods and services. So, meaning like if you buy a used car, you're not paying the
No
fair
tax.
tax. If
Right.
you buy a used home, and by the way, you look at realtor statistics in the US, almost 90% of all home sales are used homes. They're
Right.
not usually new homes. You avoid the fair tax legally. You have
Right.
two of your larger lifetime expenditures where you can legally avoid the fair tax, which is very cool. And what we like to say is you control your tax expenditures under the fair tax. Now let me get back to this regressivity and progressivity we talked about. Well,
Okay.
like what about the working Justin? Let me put a question in your mouth, Justin. Jade,
Mhm.
what about the working poor? And you're going to charge them 23% on everything they buy. They're
Yeah,
going to
that's
go
not
try to
fair.
buy. That's not fair. You're going to go buy baby formula, diapers. You're just trying to make ends meet. What the
Yeah.
heck? What the heck,
Wait a
Jade?
minute. Wait a minute here.
Yeah. And so
So is
this
there
is what
so does the fair tax have a solution for that or what?
Yes, good question,
Okay.
Mr. Justin. Very good question. It does. It's called the prebate. So
Okay.
technically, when you read the 100-page bill, it's called the family consumption allowance. In colloquial terms, we call it the prebate. And so what the prebate is it says, listen, you've got to spend up to a certain level. And let's say
Mhm.
it's probably right now 38,000 for a family of four, based on what? The DHHS annual poverty level that is published by our Department of Health and Human Services. So
Mhm.
what the fair tax says is, listen, you got to spend, up to the poverty level to live, and it changes based on your family size. So I'm
Mhm.
going to use my calculator. $38,000, if that's the poverty level for a family of four, and I times it by 23%. That's $8,740 you'd be paying to survive in fair tax at the cash register, Walmart, Home Depot, for Amazon when you buy new goods and services. Now, what
Right.
the fair tax does with this prebate is says, listen, you don't need to be taxed up to your expenditures at the poverty level. Tax is going to be, guess what? Optional. Is going to be completely your choice because the idea is you have to spend up to the poverty to live. You
Right.
have to spend beyond the poverty for incidentals and, maybe a nicer house, maybe a fancier car, maybe gray poupon mustard instead of French's mustard. You get where I'm going. So anything beyond the poverty level is your choice. And that's what you pay the fair tax on because I did that math there. Be 8,000 times 23% equals a little over $8,700. You get that back each year in a direct deposit to your bank account under the fair tax. Think of it like a standard deduction under our income tax, but that's your money back up to the poverty level for the taxes you'd pay on expenditures up to the poverty level. And you get, so 8740, let me divide by 12, you get it monthly. $728.33 into your bank account at the beginning of every month. And so you get that back. You'll go pay it at Walmart. You're going to pay your fair tax when you buy your groceries at Walmart, and you get that prebate back. So all your expenditures up to the poverty level are tax free. Now, what that does, Justin, is when you really look at the math, and it's actually just simple, some multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. It makes the fair tax more progressive because of the
Okay.
prebate and less
Yes.
regressive, even though it's one single rate for everybody. So that's pretty cool.
Right. Okay, so man, that sounds so I mean, you mentioned going to Walmart and buying your stuff. So what if kind of try to do like a swap with your neighbors or your friends or something, where you trade this, maybe you're growing some food or something and they trade you for some other good or service. Am I
Harder.
Yeah. I mean, you could really kind of stock up some value or assets if you're not going to Walmart. Is that true or
I love the skepticism, and it's good. It's good to be intellectually curious. I can
Uh-huh.
tell. Well, Justin and I, for your audience, we haven't known each other. We just kind of met and,
Yeah.
and and talked a little bit. But I say this sincerely. I love the questions, the professional skepticism, the intellectual curiosity. It's great. Let me answer your question, Justin. I think it's a good question with a couple
Mhm.
more just little basic tenets of the fair tax. The fair tax does have a few things. I've read the whole bill, like up to I can't remember if it's $1,200 or $1,500 a year, and incidental sales. So say your 14-year-old mows 20 lawns over the summer. Your little daughter has a lemonade stand out front and makes $500. Sales up to a certain, we call it de minimis amount, are just
Mhm.
totally exempt from the fair tax. We're not going to mess around with that. And plus, you don't want to get into record keeping with all that. And plus, kids need to have a little freedom to do some stuff like that. So in unless you get above a de minimis amount, a lot of that stuff would be de minimis. Let's just say that. But I still want to address your question for the above de minimis amount. But let me insert another fact. So right now, in the IRS commissioner on record a couple years ago even said this, we have about a $1 trillion illegal evasion problem. So, and again, for your listeners, avoidance is legal. You can, structure, plan. Maybe I make my charitable contribution on December 31st instead of January 1st. That's smart. That's tax
Yeah.
avoidance. Tax
Mhm.
evasion is the illegal concept where you're cheating the law. And so right now, our tax law, all 80,000 plus pages of tax code, tax law, tax interpretations, and legal guidance, and tax code, 80,000 plus pages. And what was the fair tax? 100 pages. So
Yeah.
let that sink in for a second.
Right.
So all 80,000 plus pages, of our income tax goes away under the fair tax. And I lost my train of thought. Where were we going there?
Well, we're talking about the benefit of, you were I kinda asked about bartering,
Oh,
and
yes,
then
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And we're talking about evasion. So the 80,000 plus pages say that we should collect a trillion with a T more than we collect each year. They just,
Mhm.
a lot of it could be, the 20 million folks that are in the US illegally. They're not filing Form 1040, things like that. And
Mhm.
then there's just a lot of cheating.
Right.
Especially, small businesses are the backbone of this country, but there's a lot of them who, and we can talk about the psychological aspects a little later, but you feel like, they're spending my money on researching the mating habits of the Mongolian dung beetle in Tibet.
I
I don't
know,
want my
right?
tax dollars going to that. And there's a gazillion examples of that, right? And so you can, rationalization and justification is one third of what we call the fraud triangle in the CPA world. And you can certainly do that with the income tax. And there's
'Cause
cheating at the
I mean, if
trillion dollar level.
you're selling some sort of good and it's maybe illegal, that good is you're not supposed to sell it. I mean, you're not gonna be reporting that,
Exactly.
and you're basically saying, I don't know how much, I'm sure there's some services that are offered too, but you're saying that they estimate that it's over $1 trillion.
$1 trillion a year, that's exactly right. IRS commissioner, we actually
So
commissioned a study, and it showed that it was trending to that by 2026. IRS commissioner confirmed it in testimony 2 years ago.
so for the people that are hardworking and honest,
Yep.
they're just getting it sucked out, and for the people that maybe are kind of operating under the radar and doing something illegally, they get to avoid what we have to do. And again, when they go, I mean, I guess they gotta pay if they live in a state with a sales tax, but so really it sounds to me with this that they would have to pay their fair share because, I mean, no matter what, you're gonna have they're gonna buy some stuff, right? Or I mean, am I
You
think
gotta
yeah,
consume to live, Justin.
right?
You very astutely are getting to a point I was gonna bring up. You have to consume to live. And with
Yeah,
the consumption tax, in theory, you have to income to live as well, but you don't have to report your income under our current system. It's just very convoluted. But you have to
uh-huh,
consume to live. It's a great point. And so where I was going with that is a trillion a year with income tax, illegal evasion on the record. Guess what the studies show for the fair tax? 50 billion a year. So you're talking, so 50 billion sounds like a lot, right? But compared to a trillion, it's like an over 90% reduction, almost enough to balance our budget just with the elimination of over 90% of illegal evasion a year. And you ask, well, why, Jade? How is that possible? Good luck going into Walmart and saying you're not paying the sales tax. Have you ever tried
right.
that? They might say, well, thank you, sir. Have a good day. And well, there's the exit.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
No, you
or
gotta
on
pay it.
Amazon. On Amazon, like, that there's the sales tax. It shows up.
Yeah. Well,
Wayfair.
also what it makes, instead of I don't know how to do taxes. I'm not a certified professional accountant. I'm
Yep.
just a Joe Schmo. Like,
Right.
why do I gotta worry every single year about, having to figure out the math on this? It's like to me that's another thing that makes so much sense. It's like, let's put this in the hands of the professionals. They're already a lot of times collecting tax for the state, to me, I mean, that's another thing that just absolutely 100, percent makes. But I wanted to kind of come back to,
To your
one of
question
the
on barter,
things.
I didn't answer it.
Well, no, 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 it's no, I was actually I feel like you kinda did, but one of the things that I think, because and I know you clearly said that it takes away the income, but I hear so many people, especially, I think I don't wanna say the left, but I just said it. So when
Uh-huh.
I see 'cause, I don't know how many months ago, maybe a year now, but it was in the news a lot, this HR 25, and everybody was saying, "Look at this. They're gonna double tax us." So I guess I just wanna drive home the point that no, this can you kinda talk on that just to make I know you already touched on it, but
No,
can you
no.
kinda drive it home that it doesn't there's not a double tax here?
That's exactly right. We have to allay that fear because that's a normal, rational fear. Like in the UK, so yes, I'll address that. Let me give you a quick story. There was a fair tax, just a promotion event. Like I don't know if it was a state fair or like a farmers market deal in Florida. Probably at least 10 years ago, and one of our fair tax volunteers was there at the table kinda talking to people, handing out a little flyer, and this lady from the UK said, "I like this," and I'm gonna butcher the British accent. "I like this. Don't you dare don't you dare let them do to you what they did to us in the UK. They have both they do a VAT, but very similar, not exactly the same, but similar, a sales tax and an income tax." And
Yeah.
and so what this fair tax does, when you read the first couple pages of the bill, guess what it
Mhm.
does? It rescinds every single section of IRS, the Internal Revenue Code. It's all gone. And so
Right.
you will not have the income tax. Now, what people worry about and what the fair tax does to address this worry is people say, well, yeah, the fair tax gets rid of it, but what if one wise politician, from a very progressive, coastal state wants to say, we just have this national emergency. We just need an income tax. It'll only affect the rich. Trust me, just like they said, in 1913 with the 16th Amendment, it'll only affect the rich.
Right.
And they come and they, on top of the fair tax, implement an income tax. Well, what the fair
Mhm.
tax does in the very last paragraph of the bill, it's called the sunset clause. It
Mhm.
says because the constitutional amendment process is different than normal legislative process, and your
Uh-huh.
listeners probably know you need two-thirds of Congress and three-quarters of the states to ratify a constitutional amendment. Because of that, you have to do it outside the bill, but the sunset clause says, listen, if you don't like the fair tax, you got a 7-year try it or buy it. If you don't rescind, if America doesn't rescind the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, that's what allowed the income tax in the first place. Sorry, the 16th Amendment in 1913. You get your income tax back and the fair tax goes away. You got 7 years. The clock is ticking on the day of enactment.
Okay. So, I wanna make sure because yeah, I thought it was the 16th. Is it the 16th or 13th
Oh, goodness, I
amendment?
always transpose. It's the 16th
Okay.
Amendment in 1913.
Right. Okay. Okay, yeah. So, because I mean, that's the big thing is, they said, "Hey, this is just temporary. We need some money," or however they justified it.
It was soak the
So we're
rich. It was soak the
yeah.
rich. It was one of the 7 deadly sins, envy. Just, those rich, they can afford it. It'll only affect the rich. That was
And
that was a sales job.
I hear a lot of that these days too. I hear a lot of that, just, well, take the money from the billionaires, take the money from the rich. And I mean, it sounds good in theory, but I just, what about from, a professional like yourself? Is that really like long term, really what is something that helps a country or I kind of, let me just say, I kind of feel like you want to motivate
Yes.
the people to be, because I mean, if the reality is, people are who people are. And if you have a successful person and you have one country that's like, well, let's take all the money from them, wouldn't they go to another country? And it's like, I don't know. I mean, is that because I mean, even if you are a billionaire, if you're super rich and et cetera, you can't do it on your own. You're gonna have to pay other people to get what you want done.
Job
Is that
creation. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, what do you think about my thinking there? I mean, it's just so frustrating when I hear people say this. It's like, "Well, just take the money from the rich." It's like, "Okay, well, let's think through that. So how are you
Exactly.
gonna do that?" So, we're gonna tax them more when they get income." Well, they don't get income. They get a stock. And, so now when you buy a s so when so how do you tax a stock? What if they don't sell it? What if they don't sell the well, just taxed for how much they okay, so when you buy a stock for your 2,000, 3,000 bucks or whatever, so we're gonna tax you too, right? No, 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 just the rich. Well, well, how does that work exactly? It's just, it sounds good, like take the money from the rich, but in practice, it's like, how do you actually do that? Do you ever talk about or do you ever argue
Oh,
with
yeah.
people about these concepts?
Yeah, let's just take a simple example. Say it's Justin and Jade Incorporated, and we've done really well, my friend. We
Mhm,
we are raking it in, and we let's just say our bottom line, our income is 1 billion a year, just something ridiculous, right? We're
mhm.
just you and I have just created the best widget, and it's better than the iPhone and sliced bread and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And let's say like, the tax rate's 40% and they, again, just our income and the tax rate's 40%. Let's even say, like, we're gonna make the wealthy pay their fair share. So they're taking 50%. They're taking 500 million of our billion. Now the argument would be, well, 500 million is plenty for Justin and Jade, and they could be fine. And you and I might even begrudgingly acquiesce and say,
Mhm,
fine. But now, you know what? We need even more spending because it's a human right to have all these things, whether it's doctor's visits or sex changes or whatever. It's a human right. You got to pay for that. And we need more money.
mhm,
Justin and Jayden, the rate's going to be 70% now. We're going to take 700 million of your billion and you're going to be fine on the 300 million and let's just by argument, let's just say we are very benevolent and kind and we somehow begrudgingly acquiesce and agree to this. But
mhm.
then the same thing happens a few years later and when we need even more because 'cause we're just so in debt, the wealthy need to pay their fair share.
Right.
And by the way, that's never been quantified or defined what exactly that means. It's just a
Yeah.
nebulous term thrown out there. But now they need 99% of our income.
Mhm,
And we're gonna be able to get by. Maybe we have to at some point, and this is just logical. We're not trying to say the rich is right, the poor is wrong, or the Democrats are this is just human nature, a
mhm.
psychological and sociological reality. At some point, and it'll be different for everyone, at 50%, 60%, 99%, we're gonna say, you know what? Forget it. I'm not working anymore. And I'm gonna put my hammer down and I'm gonna stop making my widget.
Right.
Right, right, and so
Exactly.
at some point it falls apart. Now, what the progressives and let's say the far left will throw out is, "Well, we just need to tax the rich. We can pay for it." And then they don't to your point, they don't think it all the way through. Now let's use the last example. Let's do it in an educational setting, and you've probably heard this example before. Your daughter, she goes off and she's getting a great education at Vanderbilt in Nashville,
Mhm,
Tennessee, wonderful school, and you know what? She works her tail off and she gets an A, but the teacher is like, listen, everyone needs to be treated equally.
mhm.
Everyone is going to get the same. So we're going to average out, and all those people that got Fs, they get bumped up to the C, and Mrs. Justin daughter here, let's call her Abigail. Abigail gets an A plus. She gets put down to a C, so everyone can pay their fair share, so it can be spread evenly, so everyone gets the same grade. And guess what?
Yeah.
Those people that are getting the A's, do you think the next class, Abigail's gonna work hard and get an A anymore? It's
No.
actually demotivating to people because she's never gonna do that again. And
Right.
you know what it is? This is what the far left doesn't think about. What a indictment on the diversity and individuality of people when you think that way. Everyone's different. To your point earlier, everyone's got God-given wiring that is different. He's a diverse
Right.
God. He's a very diverse God. He made all sorts of different people. And to think you can make everyone earn the same, have the same size house, have the same grade in college, or have the exact same amount of wealth is not only ludicrous, it spits in the face of the diversity and individuality and differences in people, which make our world so beautiful.
Right. Yes. So what I mean, I've obviously spoken to a lot of people about the fair tax, and I was like, I don't know if it was a mistake, but I went on Reddit and I went on one of these subreddits that it had a lot of CPAs on there, and
Okay.
oh my gosh, I got my shorts handed. I mean, they just tore me up, and anything that I threw back, it was just, vile and spit, and so what is it? I mean, you're a CPA,
Uh-huh.
so how come it seems like anytime I talk to CPAs about this, they're just is it I don't want to insult CPAs as a whole, but it just kind of seems like they're always very against this. Why? I mean, you're kind of a rare breed here. What I mean, can you kinda talk about that a little bit,
Man,
or
my
is
fellow
that
CPAs are spitting vitriol and venom at you, goodness.
Yes. No, my gosh, they just talk about how I'm short-sighted and how, it would never happen and how, I'm an idiot
Let's
for
pause on
thinking.
the
Yeah.
"it'll never happen." I get that a lot. Do
Yes.
you think in the '90s that women would ever get the right to vote? That will never happen, Justin. That will
Right.
never happen. Thank goodness we had some pioneers that wronged that inequality in our American life, and it actually
I
did
always say,
happen
"Well,
in
not with that
1920.
attitude." That's what I always say.
Yeah, yeah,
I go, "That won't happen with that attitude." That's what I say.
yeah, that's the perfect answer, and
Yeah.
oh, we're gonna put a man on the moon. You have to be smoking crack, Justin. We're never That's impossible. We can never do that. The thing I say, America, especially relative to any other nation, does amazing, great things. So the
Yes.
defeatist attitude of that'll never happen, you know what? Just be gone from my presence because that's a defeatist attitude, right? Like, of
Right.
course, with that attitude, it'll never happen the way you phrase it. And I love that phraseology. And now some people, again, you don't totally give up on them. You actually talk to them about it. And like it can happen with the right impetus in the right fire because we're used to doing things that are impossible in this country. So let me
Yes.
ask your question, like to answer your question now, I don't know the specific contents of your individual messages and conversations on Reddit, but
I
one thing
feel
I
like it's
have
a knee jerk. They
okay, yeah.
knee-jerk reaction to it. It's they don't really think through it. They just I don't know, I don't know, I don't think like a CPA. I just don't. So
No,
it
we
it
should.
almost seems like they just respond back with,
No.
"That's horrible," because I think, this is my opinion, I don't know what they think for sure, but I think they think somehow, like, they're gonna, like, lose work or that's gonna damage their career
There's
or they're gonna
that's
make
part
less
of it.
money or I don't know.
That's what I've found with CPAs a lot of time and other fellow accountants, a lot of times they haven't taken the time to, do the what I'll call the 10-minute understanding of the fair tax. They just hear national sales tax and they don't
Mhm.
realize there's a prebate to keep it from being regressive. One of the biggest arguments I hear from people who, again, haven't learned the 5 or 10 minute background of the fair tax are like, "Ah, it's regressive. It's going to be horrible on the poor. Oh my gosh." That's the biggest knee jerk I hear.
Okay.
So when you hear, "Oh, the fair," it's got the prebate, it keeps all your spending up to the poverty level tax free, and actually all your tax is really optional after that because all your spending beyond the poverty level is optional. And then
Mhm.
also you got the whole used and new thing as well, where you can legally avoid major lifetime expenditures under the fair tax and legally avoid paying the fair tax. So I think that's the biggest thing. The work thing, and let me so I graduated from Oklahoma State University in the mid
Is
90s,
that
bachelor's.
OSU?
OSU. Go
I went to
Pokes.
OSU,
No, you didn't.
but I went to Oregon State University.
The Beavers. Well, at
Yep,
least we had the same colors, Justin, orange and
yeah,
black.
isn't that funny? Well,
Yeah.
it's funny if you actually, type in, it doesn't neither of our schools come up now, it's Ohio
Ohio
State.
State. I
Yeah, they
know.
are just such a monster house, yeah, anyways,
Yeah,
I
no,
digress.
that's true. They're an 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah,
So I graduated with my bachelor's and master's in accounting, and it was a good stretch of, I don't know, it seemed like 10 years in a row. There would be a graduate accounting practicum course in OSU, invite me back, and the class was basically a bunch of professional people that would come in and do a 2 hour and 20-minute class, and that was kind of the context of this graduate class, just to get exposure to professionals. And so I'd come in and do it on the fair tax, and
mhm,
there'd be about 30 kids in the class, and these were kids going into public accounting, the big four, other corporations. Half of them would be specializing in tax. And at the end of 2 hours and 20 minutes, and we go real deep into the weeds. And I'd always say, like, who here thinks, by show of hands, who here thinks the fair tax would be a good idea in replacing the income tax? And 29 out of 30, every single time, every single year, raise their hand. And these
that
are
is so
accountants.
cool.
So what
Yeah,
it says to me, to your point, and the arguments, the knee jerks, is they just need a 10-minute understanding of what it really is. And this is what I
yeah,
say. Imagine the tax haven of the world, the economic estimates for GDP growth, real wages growth, purchasing power, the cash in your pocket after all your taxes and all of that stuff. They're all higher. And these are PhD economic research studies. You can check them out at fairtax.org. They all
mhm,
show you're going to be wealthier under the fair tax. It's just a more efficient
yes,
system. And the thing is, if we're the tax haven of the world, we're going to be dying for good, qualified professionals to do stuff There's gonna be no
Right.
more income tax department, so let's allay that fear, that
Mhm.
trepidation, and say, like, "Don't worry, I promise you, you will have a job if the fair tax is
Yeah.
enacted, even though you've dedicated 30 years to the tax code." That's gonna stink
Mhm.
when we gotta acknowledge that. That's gonna stink if you're a tax professional, but you've got
Okay.
transferable skills as a tax expert. You've got transferable skills. You know how to solve problems, you know how to research, you know how to read. So I promise there will be jobs.
So
Absolutely.
can I kinda touch on that a little further? 'Cause, so let's just say you work at H&R Block and
Mhm.
you set appointments and they come in and they give you all their documentation, you do a person's personal income t or, return.
Mhm.
What how would you so they're basically saying, "Well, I'm not gonna be able to do that anymore." And if I'm putting you on the spot too much here, we can say move on, but, how
Alright, yeah.
what do you say to I mean, so I'm not gonna be able to do that anymore. What can I do in this new economy? Or how do you answer that?
So let's backtrack about 120 years, and you come to me with the same question. You're like, "Hey, these horse and buggy drivers,
Mhm.
they've got a good job and they drive the horse and buggy and they take you around town. And this crazy guy, Henry T. Ford, wants to create this thing. I think it's called the automobile or something. What are all these horse and buggy drivers going to do? Well, I mean,
Okay.
how are we going to survive, Justin?
That's a good answer. Yeah,
Well,
I see.
and I don't mean that flippantly, but let's think about
Yeah,
all
no,
the
no,
progress.
it makes
Think about
sense.
TG and Y. I'm 52 years old, so you might not remember these little five and dime stores they called them. What about all the small TG and Ys and five and dime stores? They're going to lose their job when Walmart comes to town. Aren't we all
Yeah,
pretty glad that we have a big Walmart because the prices are lower, they're more efficient with their product and their supply chain and their delivery systems, and we can pay $1.50 for that lettuce instead of $3.50 for that lettuce. I think 99% of people are pretty generally happy about that. So the what you bring up is a good thought. It's a natural question. It's like for progress that advances society, that makes something more efficient, easier, better on 350 million Americans. Do we hold that up so that H&R Block guy, who's not even a CPA, or maybe they're
right.
an enrolled agent with the IRS, can keep their job? On now, when you phrase it that way, it sounds ludicrous, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm just trying to I've never really I'm again, thank you so much for doing this. So the guy that works at now, what about I mean, by the way, I wanted to add one thing. I did an actual let's just say this thing gets ratified or they actually get the votes, and I kinda did like
Mhm.
I mean, this isn't for sure, but this is just kinda my best guess of kinda setting dates for how and it's not instant. I mean, it's not like this thing gets passed whenever they vote next and it's just instant. It's a process. I think it's almost 2 years or something like that. So, obviously, it's something you could say to that person working on H&R Block. It's like, you're going to have time. I mean, and plus, I mean, what do you think? Well, I guess you're kind of, I mean, H&R Block is a pretty big company but I mean, how does a company like that, do they shut their doors or do they kind of start, well, let's kind of change or I don't really know a lot about H&R Block, but I mean, I know one of the things I know you used to work for a pretty big company. I mean, are they shutting their doors and having or are they able to kind of transition or can you answer that at all? Or is
Sure,
that kind
sure.
of that same
Let's
kind of answer?
it is, but it's worth exploring. It's a good question. Let's take the big four public accounting firms. So you've
Uh-huh.
got Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst and Young, KPMG, the four largest professional services firms in the nation, actually in the world, because they've got global networks. But in the
Hmm.
U.S., you've got at least probably 33% of the business is focused on tax. Now they do consulting. They also do financial statement audits, none of which would go away under the fair tax. You still have
Okay.
SEC regulations that require public companies to have financial statement audits, balance sheet and income statement are reasonably stated, yada, yada, yada. But for the
Hmm.
tax work, I think about it like this. Like you've got, again, these are CPAs, well trained. They know the tax code at a very granular level. And again, 0% corporate income tax. You'll still have some international tax. There's actually a international tax practice within each of the big four that focus on, folks that do global business. So you'll still have some aspects of international tax that will remain and you'll need expertise. But for the US corporate income tax, again, think about all the other things.
Well, I think
Sure.
I can actually add to your point. So you're basically saying, see, I didn't really know this. So you're basically saying it's only about 30% of their business. So, like, I mean, just for me personally, my mom was a CPA, but she only in the very beginning of her career, she worked for a public accounting firm. She ended up getting a job as a CFO that really had nothing to do with, so I guess that's kind of the answer. It's like, well, that's just 30% of their business. 70% is, and of course, that 30% will kind of get transitioned into other areas. Is that kind of the answer, or no?
Yeah, you very astute. That's exactly where I was going in that, again, when you have think about it, so you're gonna have transactions, divestitures, acquisitions, carve-outs, new business is going to be booming. Again, all the economic PhDs predict under the fair tax, you're gonna have more transactional work than the CPAs can handle. All these tax professionals, especially at the Big 4 level, I don't know about at the H&R Block level, but they are well trained and will be able to transition. I think there's obviously transition time, but it'll be very, very seamless in my estimation.
I
And
love
so,
that. That is so
yes.
great because I don't always have the answer because I'm not a CPA, and I said, well, ask a CPA. So I mean, now I feel like I really have a much better answer. This is so great. Can I ask a little bit more? Because I think people always like to, it's like, hey, you're selling me something, but let me know who you really are. So
Yeah.
are you currently in the middle of your career? When you worked at one of these Big Fours, did you agree with the fair, or when did you can you kinda talk, like, take it
Yeah.
to you, like, personal, like, your personal story
Yeah,
a
no,
little
so
bit?
I we're trying to remember when I first heard about the fair tax. It's probably in the early 20 teens, and I was
Okay,
very intrigued. I was very intrigued because I'm always like, I'm an efficiency guy. Like, I want it to be streamlined and efficient. And so my wife is an interior decorator, sole proprietor.
okay,
And so, but I would be up to to help her out with just her little, Schedule C, income taxes. I would be up into the middle of the night, at least a couple nights a year when it's tax time,
uh-huh.
reading IRS instruction forms. And I'm a CPA, right? Like, so
Oh
this,
my gosh,
right?
yeah,
And I'm up till 3 in the morning reading this junk because I've got to get it right, and I don't want any
right,
errors, and I want to do it by the book. And I just always felt like there's got to be a better way. And then I
mhm,
heard about the fair tax, and this politician who ran for the Republican nomination in '08, skipped 2012, then again in 2016, named Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas. You might
mm,
have heard of him.
yep,
He was espousing the benefits of the fair tax. I'm like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And so, but I'll be honest, for many years, I didn't go that deep. Maybe I learned about the prebate, but I just was like, hey, I like that. And, you're young and you're a professional and you're working hard and you got young children. And I didn't pay much attention to it until it was probably 2017 ish when I found these podcasts from the Fair Tax guys. They do this
oh
radio
yeah,
show once a week. It used to be Bob Paxton and Ron Malero, and Ron Malero unfortunately passed away, and now it's Bob Paxton, Bob Scarborough. Great little podcast if anyone likes it. It's like 30 minutes once a week. And I found them and I kind of wrote them an email saying, "Hey, I love the fair tax. I'll start, donating to the cause." And they wanted me on the show. And so I actually was out for a event with my firm in Orlando and took the kind of a boondoggle, could take the family to Disney. And I drove up to Ocala, Florida, where they sat, and did a show with them. And then I got a little deeper because I started researching more and reading
uh-huh,
more, probably about 2017. So again, I'm still at my Big 4 public accounting firm. I took an opportunity to early retire at the end of 24, and I'm
okay,
52 now. So I
okay.
was still at a large firm, and just I would talk to my tax partner friends. So I was an
Yeah,
audit
what
partner.
would they say? I mean, was that because you said I mean, you have, like, a batting 1,000 with your speeches, but what about with your partners?
Yeah, well, when I explained it to them, virtually everyone like, that sounds like a really good deal,
Man,
actually.
that
Now
is so cool.
some of the tax partners I talked to, they'd be like, "Oh, I just don't think it'll ever happen." Like,
Right,
that
that negative
typical,
attitude.
yeah, the negative attitude. And there's truth to that unless we make it happen.
Yeah.
but they couldn't argue with me on the merits. And I'd go really deep with some of them that I was closer with. And yeah, we'd have great conversations. But I really never heard anyone say, like, I never heard an argument that was like, that won't work because of this, because it's unfair to the public because of this, or there was no, what should I say, meritorious objections. It was just,
Mhm.
it would cause a disruption to me, kind of. I don't like it, and I'm just gonna
Okay.
frown.
Wow, that is really cool. See, uh, I don't know if you know Frank or Marty or, some of these guys have been involved since, I mean, for 2 decades now. And, and actually the person that told me about the fair tax, he won't even talk to me about it. I try to bring
Mm.
it up and he says, "Justin, it's never gonna happen." I was really into it for a few years and just was constantly getting beat up. So your words are actually really encouraging to me right now.
Oh,
And,
good.
the last podcast I did was with Frank, and he was kind of feeling like maybe the tide is shifting also, So
Yes.
maybe, I mean, maybe, because I mean, that's the thing, I played team sports in school and, I'm a team guy. So when it comes to like, my team being America, I want America to be better. And that's what I see. It's like, gosh, if we can do this, you guys,
Did I
this
lose you
isn't
there?
just like some sort of individual little thing good for, yes, it is good for each of us individually, but this is good for us as a country.
Heck
Look at
yeah.
the facts here, you know what I mean? The people that perhaps keep their assets or wealth in other countries, everybody's bringing it. This is now an haven, right? I mean, that's the
Yes.
thing that I wish people would grasp. It's like, because I hear a lot of negative things about America and, maybe we're on the decline or, I mean, this is something that's going to, propel us forward. And it's like, why doesn't everybody else see that? So talking to you, this is like really encouraging. I mean, it's like, gosh,
Let
this
me
maybe is, yeah.
let me give you some more encouragement. Like,
Okay.
if you listen to our Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, he's out there floating a trial balloon. And here's the thing, I think the reality is any president, any side of the aisle, absent our current president, is, you've had to grow up through, air quote here, establishment, procedures and protocol, and you go along with the current, and it's really hard to get a
Hmm.
disruptor. Well, we've got a disruptor in chief now, and his Commerce Secretary is basically floating getting rid of the income tax. You've heard him in speeches. He said,
Yeah.
"Listen, the most prosperous time in our country was up until 1913, and when we had
Right.
tariffs and excise taxes." And they're floating it now. What we're trying to do as Americans for Fair Taxation is recognize this, throw away our let's say our more traditional corporate America strategic plan of getting to the certain number of Congress people. What we've learned is Congress people don't do anything unless they feel fire, unless they feel their job threatened, their longevity as a congressperson threatened.
Okay.
President Trump will actually, we think we can, if we can get the right folks in front of him, this might be the once in a lifetime chance to do it. And so we're
Okay.
very encouraged. We still need a miracle. We still
Yeah.
need a miracle. We still need the right fortuitous circumstances to play our way perfectly. But you know what? Let's have a positive attitude. Let's believe in it because it'd be great for everyone in America.
Yeah. Now what do you think? I mean, I it's so hard to get into the I don't want to call them the enemy, but sometimes I feel like some of these justifications is just like it doesn't make sense. But do you think it's just like they feel like they're gonna lose control or what is the
That's a
real it's like this is good for everybody. Why in the world would you be against it? It's hard to sometimes get in their shoes. Not that I want to get in their shoes, but sometimes I think it's necessary. It's like guys, what am I missing here? What do you see?
no.
And I feel like a lot of the answers are, I don't know. It's just like it's just frustrating. Can you address that at all? Or
Yes, I love the question. So obviously, you think about the income tax. It is mechanism that exerts an immense amount of control over people, citizens
Mhm.
and non-citizens. It's a mechanism that allows politicians to garner an immense amount of control. And guess what it does? It also allows a mechanism to what can I do every 2 and 4 year election cycle? I can demonize my opponent. You
Mhm.
just tax and spend. You just give benefits to the wealthy. You don't pay your fair share. It divides our country. And we all know the quote from President Lincoln about a house divided cannot stand. So we
Yeah.
actually have this income tax system that's set up to tear us apart. So let me tell you why. Because unfortunately, human nature is guess what people like? Lobbyists and politicians, they love power. Power is
Right.
intoxicating.
Yeah.
And there's a strong lust for it. So this is why people that do hate it, hate the fair tax. And let's talk about
Mhm.
this concept of freedom because this bill, this act would give more freedom and return more freedom and power to the citizen than almost any other bill in the history of the country, absent the liberation of slaves in the so let's go amendment by amendment. What does the income tax allow people to do? First Amendment, free speech, right? Well, guess
Yeah.
what? LBJ in 1954, he passed what's called the Johnson Amendment. You might have heard of it, maybe not, but it
Mhm.
prohibits 501c3 companies from endorsing or opposing political candidates. It's a
Mhm.
restriction on free speech. Let's go to the Fourth Amendment. The income tax, we Fourth Amendment, illegal search and seizure, right? You can't
Mhm.
just go grab Justin's stuff out of his house without due process and a warrant and probable cause and all these things in the Fourth Amendment. You can with
Mhm.
the income tax. It's called civil asset forfeiture. And they
Yeah.
use an arcane legal concept called in rem. What the heck does that mean, Jade? Well, it's your cash or your assets that committed the crime, not you. So we can seize that without any due
Oh,
cause,
wow.
without any probable cause, civil asset forfeiture. Let's go to the Fifth Amendment, due process. You can't deprive an individual of life, liberty, or property without due process. Well, again, civil asset forfeiture, you sure can with the income tax, but we don't even notice it. We don't even bring it up. The Fifth Amendment also gives you the right to not have to self-incriminate. You can plead the Fifth.
Mhm.
Guess what you have to do when you voluntarily fill out your income taxes? You're essentially foregoing your Fifth Amendment rights. How about you give me
Right.
a tax bill and tell me what I owe? Why do I have to
Yeah.
fill it out?
Yeah.
It violates the Fifth Amendment. Let's go to
Yeah.
the Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment says you have a right to a jury of your peers. Guess what? Our tax courts, like if the IRS sues you and takes you to court and wants all this money, tax courts, you don't have a right to a
No
jury
jury.
trial by jury of your peers. Nope. Let's go.
Wow.
Let's go to the 14th Amendment that kind of came out after slavery. You've got equal
Mhm.
protection under the law, and you can't deprive anyone of life, liberty, and property and things like that. Equal protection. Well, just think, we talked about earlier that graduated income tax rate. Justin,
Mhm.
you make $1 billion a year, so you're at 37% for most of your income. I'm only making 50,000 a year, so I'm going to be at 20%. Wait, your income gets taxed at 37%, mine at 15%. Is that equal protection under the law? Meaning the law can't discriminate against people. It has to treat everyone exactly the same. The income
Right.
tax by its very nature violates the 14th Amendment. So
Yes.
you've got this system that inhibits our freedom and grants enormous power to, and guess what the lobbyists love? They make $500,000 a year salaries lobbying to make golf clubs a medical expenditure that's deductible. And then when they get the
Right.
deduction, they lobby something else. And then when it goes away, they get to lobby for it again. It's just like this vicious, incestuous cycle. And then they get campaign donations for the Congress people. And so they love it. The tax code is the second most lobbied area outside of pharmaceuticals in general legislation in all of K Street in Washington. The tax
Yeah.
code. We could eliminate all of that with the fair tax. So I hope that maybe
Yeah.
gives
No,
your
man, I
question
can
some.
see why you're so effective. I'm gonna be frank with you. I don't think I've ever heard anybody be so succinct the way you are. I could see why Jim and C said, "Hey, Jade, you are very skilled." But man, that was amazing. So I don't really know a lot about how things get passed or the Congress or but it seems like it would kind of get passed with compromise.
Mhm.
Do you have any? I know you're a CPA, but do you? So it's like, okay, let's say somebody's, well, maybe they don't want to say I'm going to lose power, but how, that's why they're not voting for it, or maybe they don't feel like their job is in jeopardy or something like that. And, they're making money from the lobbyists and things, or or whatnot. So how you're kind of preaching to the choir everything you said, but how do you kind of combat? How do I guess you can't compromise, or I don't know. I mean, is there a way to kind of say, okay, you feel like you're going to lose power? Well, you actually won't because of X, Y, and Z. Or I guess that's the reality, is because the fair tax does kind of shift the power back to the people a little bit, and maybe there is no compromise. Yeah, you are going to lose power. I'm sorry, but I wonder if there's some other thing that we can give. Like I say, we, like I'm included, but I wonder if there's some other way that we can say, yeah, you're going to lose this, but you'll gain this, or
Mhm.
how do you kind of speak their language, or maybe you just can't. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing I struggle with. Do you ever think about that, or is there
Yeah,
any way to offer them something?
yeah, it's a good thought. Now, a lot of the people, if you really, can get to know them personally and obviously find out the things you can agree upon first, the age old, lessons in negotiation and compromise and, ambassadors and political negotiation. Let's find our common ground first. And a lot of times when you talk to people, if you can get to them on a personal level, like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
this is great. So that's one way. Now, and I think it's okay to realize, like, even I know part of this show's theme is on faith. Well, let's
Yeah.
go back into some of the precepts of the Bible. And, we're commanded, Jesus said in the New Testament, pray for your enemies. Well, what's the
Hmm.
implicit underlying there? That you have enemies. That guess what? You're going to look at things different in this world, as long as we're here on this earth, differently than other people. And sometimes that's going to create friction and
Yeah.
conflict, and you're going to have enemies. Now, hopefully, you treat your enemies right by praying for them instead of trying to utterly, demolish them and kill them physically and in all this way. But you're going to have enemies. Now, how you treat your enemies, that's a different issue and completely up to you. But I think we need to acknowledge that it's all right. And then if this lawyer for 20 years has been lobbying Congress people on the code, he or she is not going to want to give this up and transition to some new field of lobbying, going over to pharmaceuticals or other kind of legislation. They're just going to be your enemy. And again, I don't mean that in a combative physical way, but just from a perception and an outlook way, they're going to look at things differently than you, and by definition be your enemy. And
Yeah.
that's okay. I think you got to acknowledge
Yeah.
that and say, like, hey, I'm going to beat my enemy. I'm going to defeat my enemy because I'm going to have a better argument and I'm going to convince more people with the intellectual argument, and I'm going to find a disruptor. It's going to actually get this done and everyone's going to be the better off for it. Now, they're not going to be
Yeah.
happy. They're going to switch careers, and goodness, they're a trained lawyer. They're going to be fine.
And I think that's the reality, and I think that's, we're not going to be able to convince everybody, because I think there's some things at play. You kind of touched on the faith, that perhaps it's just, maybe, I hate to say this, but it's like maybe just the enemy doesn't want to get this pushed through. But it's like, if we can get enough common sense people, enough, we don't need everybody. It doesn't have to be 100%. I
Right.
think it just has to be, a little over. I don't know the actual number, but I mean, it seems like, yeah, I mean, you're not going to be able to win everybody over. I think some of the things definitely that you're doing, that the fair tax guys are doing, all the people, um, I wish my father-in-law, he actually owns a radio station in Spokane. I wish he would, it's just oldies radio stations. So they just play, they don't get political or anything like that, but man, he has an audience. I wish he would, because he's the one that told me about the fair tax, and when he told me, it just clicked. It was like, yes, I'm into that, and I mean, that was actually about the exact same time as you. I think it was about 2010 is when I first, so almost the exact same time as you, and I've been, a proponent ever since, and it's hard. I talked to him, and it's like he won't even have a discussion. He just said, I don't want to waste my words on it. And it's
Oh,
like,
wow.
gosh, but maybe if, we can kind of get the momentum going and really see that the overall, people are kind of supporting this, maybe, we'll get some people back into the fold. I think it is kind of frustrating, though. It's like people wanna just go with it's like, where are the rebels? Where are the
Yeah.
where are the people like Marty and Frank? And I mean, they have been doing this for 20 years and are just so steady. It's we need, I mean, it's just, so anyway, it really, but I'm, gosh, I'm so happy we have you on our side. is it different sides? Hopefully it's not. We're all Americans, right? We're
Right.
not supposed to be divided here. But, is that something you can touch on? It? Are you a man of faith, or is that something that's a part of your life or your family's life?
It is. I am a Christian and believe in Jesus Christ as our Savior, and thank goodness, we have him. I think that when you really examine the Bible, like, freedom is a big concept, and, we went
Mhm.
over, kinda how the fair tax really is it's a freedom bill. I mean, now, obviously, especially when you get into the New Testament, the concept of freedom is much larger than our circumstances on earth. It's like freedom from sin and from the ultimate oppressor, and how faith in Christ can transform that and really set you free for eternity, which is something I encourage everyone to really take seriously. But at least while we're here on earth and trying to do good things and make the earth and at least our country that's a big part of this earth and a leader, on the global stage right now. Let's do
Yeah.
something great that encourages and supports the concept of freedom as opposed to the antithesis of it. So
Right,
I
right.
can completely agree.
Do you know Adam at the FairTax?
Adam from New York, yes.
Yes. We have a lot of conversations, and one of the things, immigration is really, forefront of my mind because, my wife's an immigrant, and, we kinda bring that up, but, and one of the things that he would say to me is, "Well, we used to not be a welfare state." And he said it so many times, I was like, "Okay, what do you mean here, Adam?" And he said, "Well, think about it. Before 1913, the federal government cut 0, absolutely 0 checks for, welfare, healthcare, and it was all handled, in the community, inside churches and inside when somebody have you ever thought about that concept that, kind of before this income tax, we were kind of I mean, in a community that kinda helped each other out in that way. Have you ever thought about that, or is that something
Oh,
that you've
absolutely,
ever
absolutely,
touched
yeah,
on
and
or
I
talked
think
about?
it's really when you go in the Bible, you can't find, a lot of times the far left will side like, "Well, you're supposed to help people, it's in the Bible." It's like, well, it doesn't say the I'm pretty sure the Bible doesn't say through the income tax code. It says, yeah, we're
Right.
supposed to help people, and why do I wanna have some middleman who's gonna abscond, what's that word, with the money, and, like, the middleman, the government gets a
Yeah.
little take, and
Right.
then it goes to, let me just donate, preferably through the local church, and let's have missions, local or international, that reach people and help people, especially people in need. Just I've always said, if every Christian who professes to be a Christian in the US would just truly tithe one
Uh-huh.
tenth of their income to the church, and we had good churches reaching people, we would have no need for all of the welfare programs that our tax code brings in money for.
Right.
Absolutely no need if we all did that as Christians.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, thank you for that. That really means a lot 'cause, man, I hope some of our efforts can and, not go to waste because I've been working on this for many, many years, and it sounds like you have, and, so hopefully some people can see the light. Yeah.
Justin, can I bring up one last point
Of
that's really
course.
super interesting? It's very well, you brought
Yes.
up immigration, and this is the thing. We don't know exactly how many folks are in the US illegally.
Uh-huh.
And you know what? And each one of them is a creation of God, and God loves them just as much as He loves you or me and everyone else. So they're humans, but at the same time, they're here illegally, and so we got to be, a nation that's under the rule of law. But let's
Mhm.
just say I've heard estimates higher than this and lower than this, but let's say around 20 million people in the U.S. illegally. And you think about, from an income tax and fair tax argument again, do these 20 million people in the U.S. illegal? They're earning income somehow, trying to make ends meet, whether it's farm work or factory work or illegal work. And they're not filling out Form 1040 and filing with the IRS by April 15th every year, if you follow me.
Uh-huh.
Maybe one out of 1,000, right? Like, they're just not doing it because they don't want to identify. They're living in the shadows.
Yeah.
Guess what, they under the fair tax, they have to consume at Walmart. Your point earlier, they have to consume to live. All of a
Right.
sudden, pay their full anyone here illegally pay their full federal burden finally. They've never done it before. And what does that do? That lowers the amount of tax that honest people like Justin and Frank and My wife and I and, like and so, the burden lessens because everyone here, whether legally or not, is paying their full federal burden. Now, here's the interesting thing, to get that prebate we talked about earlier, get
Uh-huh.
reimbursed for your expenditures on life's necessities, you
Mhm.
have to be a legal resident of the US, Social Security
Yeah.
number. Do these 20 million people have Social Security numbers? Nope. They're not getting the prebate, so they're paying a full 23% rate instead of kind of like on average after you factor in the prebate, the average Americans probably paying around 10, 11%, after
Mhm.
the prebate.
Right.
These folks in the US illegally paying 23%, the average American paying 10, 11%. That's a big difference. And what does it do? It inherently, naturally, elegantly encourages legal immigration. And again, boy, we're going to need it with the fair tax because
Right.
we're going to have more job openings than ever before. So
Yeah.
it's just a win win all the way around.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up immigration. It is near and dear to my heart, because my wife, and I kind of cut a little bit different perspective. I see it. I mean, it's an opportunity. We supposedly farm our work overseas, which I guess that's not supposed. That's most of the widgets aren't made here in America because it's the cost is too high. But it's like, wait a minute. So we have all these people that want to come here. We want to make the widget here. It kind of seems like we could maybe combine some of these things. But anyway, I don't know if I mean obviously there's a lot more to it than what I'm proposing, but it really I've been doing a lot of research on immigration and it kind of seems like both sides really don't wanna come to a solution. There
Mm.
could be a solution, and it really seems like nobody wants to solve it because they have some sort of motivation for it to not be solved. And I mean, I'll just say me personally, everybody I know that, it's not doesn't make here illegally, like, I like to say undocumented, but, they actually all have, Social Security numbers, and they all want to pay their taxes. A lot of times their employers are the ones that are saying, no, 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 we don't want to do that because it's more money for them. But they want to do the right thing. They because if they do the right thing, they feel like they can get their papers and they can not live in the shadows. Most people don't want to live in the shadows.
Right.
Most people don't like walking around and constantly have to look over their shoulder and see if somebody's there to pounce. Most people don't like to live like that. I mean, I
Mhm.
guess there is some people that like the rush or something or like the but in general, I think human nature, people want to just do the right thing and just live their lives and, spend time with their families and, all those kind of things. And so, yeah, to me, it's a big topic, obviously, in the news and all that. But, I just come from a little bit of a different
Yep.
perspective. And I do have to add, the whole, DACA thing that, I mean, those people are 100% in limbo right now. I don't know if
Mhm.
do you know about DACA or?
I remember in 2017, 2018, Trump was ready to let a lot of those, kids have legal status and they couldn't come to a deal.
I've done a lot of research on it, and there's so the left and the right, they both are motivated to not make a deal, and it's
Ah,
really frustrating because there is millions of people that fall into that category of the dreamers,
uh-huh,
and they're just on hold. They can't leave. If they leave, they can't come back.
uh-huh,
So, I mean, I guess they can leave, obviously, but their whole life is here, I mean, I know a lot of people that came over, they didn't choose to come here. They were brought here when they were infants, 1 month, 2-month old, and it's like, because I hear so many people kinda say, "Well, just have them go back." It's like, "Have them go back to what?" They were brought here without
yeah,
they didn't choose to come here, and their whole life, they lived here for 30 years, 20 years, and now they're supposed to go back to a country they've never lived at before because, us as American or us as government can't figure it out. So to me, it's anyway, so we're kinda off topic a little bit. I know we're supposed to be talking about fair tax.
oh, those are
I
tough issues, though. Those are
y
tough issues. The only thing I disagree with you on
yeah,
respectfully is
yeah,
earlier when you said, like, generally people wanna do the right thing. I would
uh-huh,
say coming back to faith, if we study what's in the Bible, both Old and New Testament, we know that our very nature is to not do the right thing. Our very
yeah, I
nature
hear
is
what you're saying.
depravity.
Yep.
But I know what you mean as well. I think you didn't mean it like that. You meant like, "Hey, the normal Joe Blow is just he wants to mow his lawn and have a beer at 5 o'clock and be friends with his neighbor and live his life."
I think it's more of an issue of people don't like living in fear. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like, if
I
they're
agree.
gonna yes, the nature is to maybe our sin nature, I hear you 100%. But I think that if that kind of people don't wanna know people don't want people other people to know about their sin nature, you know what I mean? It's like they
Mhm.
wanna if they're gonna be hiding, they wanna be hiding so nobody sees. But if you're here in America and you don't have documentation, you're kind of a little bit living in fear.
Mhm.
You don't feel I mean, you don't, that's the reality. You don't have all the same rights as a citizen does, and I think it's frustrating for some people that it's like, their parents came here, a month later had a child, and that child was born here, and now they have all the rights, and maybe, their other child that was born 5 or 6 months before, or not 5 or 6, but, was anyway, so some of those things are difficult, and I think that there's solutions there, but it's like it doesn't seem like either side wants to entertain those solutions because they kind of weaponize this.
Yes.
But there's a lot of things in our country. I feel like, and this is one of them. Fair tax is one of them. It's like this is common sense. This
Yep.
isn't. It's like this totally makes sense to do for to make America better. Yet for some reason, there's these few people that don't want it to happen, and somehow this minority has the power. It's like, come on, guys. So I think but the reality is, I think as Americans, we still, if we can get kind of the movement going, and if we get enough people, that don't have the attitude, oh, this is never going to happen. If we could change some of those people's attitude, it's like, no, 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 this can happen, and it's not like our country was founded like this. We had great success before the income tax, great success. Let's
Yep.
get back to that. Let's just get back to
Yes.
our roots.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely. One of the bigger things, just in my opinion, is the evasion that we talked about, 1 trillion versus 50 billion. Let's go back to our roots, like Adam Smith, who wrote Wealth of Nations. We're
uh
talking
huh,
like 1700 folks that influenced our founding fathers. And one of his concepts, he said, like, the property that we get, from earning a wage, from income, the sweat off our brow is so inviolable to a human being that if you threaten that and like you go after their income, which is the source of any property they have,
uh huh,
it's like almost a violation. And so this
yeah.
is the psychological theory, like in the world of financial statement auditing, you study like fraud and you have what's called the fraud triangle. And when three things are present, you will have fraud, whether it be defalcation, stealing, or in the world of financial statements, erroneous and intentionally wrong financial reporting. And so what the fraud triangle is, we talked about one of them earlier, rationalization and justification. And then if you have incentives or pressure, and then the last leg of the stool is opportunity. And
Mhm,
what we found is human nature, again, the depravity of the human. You're always going to have incentives and pressures to commit fraud. You're always going to be able to rationalize and justify. That's again human nature. But where you cut
mhm,
off fraud is opportunity. And opportunity is kind of the inverse of a word you use in corporate America around your systems and your processes. It's called controls. A
mhm,
control, let's take a simple example. You have a cash register. Well, guess what? The cash register is locked unless you have a valid transaction that opens it up. AKA Justin can't reach his hand in and steal all the $20 bills. That's a control. The
right,
opportunity is eliminated. And so with the income tax, you have this excessive opportunity. And obviously, you can rationalize and justify, like we talked about that the Mongolian dung beetle earlier. And everyone has incentives because I want more money in my pocket or pressures. I've got pressure because I'm broken in debt and blah, 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 all day long with the income tax. With
mhm,
the fair tax, guess what? I have a choice. My tax is optional now. Only if I want to buy that brand new shiny BMW will I pay the fair tax. If I want the used, I don't. Anything above just what it takes to live is optional, right? Because I
yes,
can, I can spend up to the poverty level and pay zero tax. You
yes,
take the psychological inclination and motivation to cheat away when you go from the fair tax from the income tax. So there's a million other examples like this, like in the recycling, you probably don't have time, but the fair tax is so elegant on all these other, I'll call them natural encouragements and
mhm,
the way it's set up. Psychologically, that's why evasion goes down from 1 trillion to 50 billion. You'll always have the guy like, hey, pay me in cash and I won't charge you for my lawn mowing and I won't charge you the fair tax. That's why, as long as you have human nature, the depravity of humans, you're going to have some cheating. But I'd rather have
yeah.
50 billion than 1 trillion.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's if we can wrap up here. If you have more things to say, just bring them up. But I wanted to make sure people know. So you're in Oklahoma, or you're in a different state, or
I live in Denver.
okay, Colorado. So let's just say, you've heard about the fair tax for the first time. I guess, I know if you talk to Adam or Steve, or, they kind of have their preset answer. They kind of say, well, go to the website and, donate, and et cetera. I like to say it a little bit different way because I think, like you kind of talked about before, everybody has different skills and everybody has, for me, the way I contribute is a lot different than maybe somebody else contributes. So, but how would you tell people just to go to the national website, or reach out on Twitter, or how do you, I mean, let's say you hear the fair tax, you're one of those 29 people at those speeches you give, and they want to, what do you tell them the next step is? How do they get involved?
Very first step, obviously, you love donations because we do. You'll have a booth at the the farmers market, and we have like slip and fall insurance, and there's cost to the organization. So appreciate the donations. The first thing I'd say is whatever congressional district you're in the United States. Get onto your congressman or congresswoman's website and let them know you want them to co-sponsor HR 25. And the same
Okay.
with your 2 senators in your state. And sometimes it's a little pain. I actually got a meeting with my congressman a few years back, but
Oh, wow.
you send off the email request, you put your email in and your address because you got to verify you're in their district and blah blah blah. And guess what? I didn't hear anything. I follow back with another email. Oh, sorry, we didn't see your request. Here, let me
Right.
set up a time. You have to be persistent to even
Yeah.
get your representative to acknowledge you. But if
Yeah.
you could do that, even just sending a letter, I want HR 25, I want the fair tax. It can be half page, it can be quarter page, it can be one page. That would be greatest. And let me say, if you're a younger professional where, man, I don't have a ton of money, but man, if I could get a tax deduction for a donation, maybe I could give $100 or
Hmm.
$50. We also have the 501c3 organization that is researching what would be the best tax system, and it's called NTRC, National Tax Research Committee. You can
Okay.
go to the National Tax Research Committee, Google and website, and it's a 501c3. You get a tax deductible donation. Americans for Fair Taxation is a 501c4, which is it's still a nonprofit, but it's because it's advocating for the fair tax. You don't necessarily get a tax deduction on your Schedule A itemized deductions.
Okay. Let me ask you, so the fair tax guys, I've talked to them before. But it was on a conference call, and we were all kind of, and I think on some email chains and whatnot. But how did you hear them on YouTube, or how did you hear their? You said it was because I thought it was just kind of a radio broadcast that they somehow got out there. I didn't really know it was like a podcast. Did they? Where do they distribute? Did you hear them on YouTube, or?
Yeah, you can get all their stuff on YouTube. And I might be using bad terminology. It is a radio broadcast, but it gets they transform it and put it out on a couple different mechanisms. I know you can always find it on Google. Let me go real quick here while we're talking, but fair tax guys.
Well, while you're doing that, when I reach, because this is kind of new for me, like I told you, we've gotten some so we're kind of all over the place. So, obviously Apple is kind of the grandfather of podcasts, so we're obviously on that, and then
Okay.
Spotify, with um, so we're all over there. But yeah, I think we posted 25 different, different URLs. So, I
Okay.
should probably talk to Bob and was it Bob and Bob? I
Bob
guess
and
they're
Bob.
yeah, Bob and Bob.
Yeah.
I should talk to them and see if I can help with distribution at all, because I know they have these great messages, and I don't really know. I think when I spoke to them before, they kind of didn't have a lot of distribution. So,
Right now on the
but
website, it says YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Facebook Live, and iHeartRadio, as well as 3 local radio stations in North Carolina and South Carolina.
oh, good. Okay, so they're actually more than the last time. I don't think they were even on Apple Podcast. So it
Okay.
sounds like they've increased their distribution, which is great.
Yeah.
There's a couple warriors right there. I mean,
Yeah.
gosh, those are the guys that keep me motivated, I mean, year after year. I mean, it's just, but it shows you that why there's so much value. It's these really smart people like yourself, like, Steve. I mean, I could, name off 20, 30 people that I have a lot of respect for, and you could see their intellectual capability. I mean, they're just very smart people. It's like the reason they're so steady is this is legit. I mean, this is a real, thing that could actually help our country. And but so I guess we just keep trying, right? We just don't give up. I
Never give up. Positive
Yeah,
attitude. You touched on that multiple times kind of indirectly, but you gotta have a positive attitude. Life's
right.
life's not worth living without it, and whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
We all know that saying, right? But and then again, getting in front of President Trump, the disruptor in chief, I think will be a once in a lifetime opportunity. And if we can get, because I think him and his Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who has an incredible story, by the way, like he was taking his son to kindergarten on the morning of 9/11. His company, Cantor Fitzgerald, like all like family members lost, coworkers, all perished in the trade center, World Trade Center on 9/11, and he happened to be taking his son for kindergarten on September 11th, 2001. Isn't that crazy? Now he's the Commerce
Yeah,
Secretary.
yeah, yeah.
But they an external revenue service, not an internal revenue service. And what if
Yes.
we can get in front of them and say, "This is the mechanism to do it. It's already been researched, it's already been done, it's revenue neutral, bam. Let's
Yeah.
get this done." That'd be amazing.
Thank thank you so much, Jade. This has been so great. I really appreciate you. Is there anything you wanna kinda do? Do you want any people to reach out to you? Do you have anything going on, or are you just more just 100% for the fair tax?
Well, I've family and work now and multiple things I'm involved with. But if anyone has any questions, they can always reach out to me. I'm happy to always answer questions about the fair tax, especially if people have like legitimate questions or natural skepticism. I mean, I love to help people understand the inner workings of it because it's not too complex and it's an easy sell. So I always enjoy
Yeah.
that. So always happy
Is
to
there any
help.
way for people to reach out to you directly, or do you want 'em to kinda go through different avenues, or
You know what? I can give my email if that's okay with you, or
let's not do email because a lot of spammers do that.
oh, okay.
I always feel like, I don't know how it works with podcasts, but I would hate to. Are you on Twitter or Facebook, or, what are the
I
other
am on
ones?
I'm on X, on
Okay,
Twitter
yeah,
X,
X,
yep.
sorry, yeah, X now. Okay, and it could just with your name?
Yep, yep,
Okay, and your spelling of your last, is it Walle, is that correct?
that's right, Wally.
Wally. Yeah, yeah, okay, Jade Walle on X. Alright,
Yep.
great. Well, thank you so much for doing this, and hope if you're out there, this is legit, and it can be done, and it just takes the right attitude. So, thanks again, Jane, and we'll talk to you super soon.